Welcome. I'm Kathy Davis, Davis Creative Publishing, and we're here today with Aleya Harris. Before we officially welcome her, I want to first remind everybody of a few logistical details. The call is being recorded. You'll receive a link to the YouTube video a few days after the call. Your attendance at these meetings serves as your permission to be seen in the recordings. Please mute yourself if you've not already done so. And find your chat button down at the bottom of the screen. I'll be watching the chat to make sure that we get all questions answered. And we promise to end the call around noon or shortly thereafter, so we can all get back to the business of the day. It is January 11th. Inspiring Author Conversations. I'm Kathy Davis. We're inviting and welcoming Aleya Harris today. We're going to be talking about breaking out of the sea of sameness. I love that, with the power of storytelling. Our theme for 2024 is growing your business by the book. Each month, we welcome guests and experts who inspire authors by sharing their knowledge, new ideas, and opportunities. Help me welcome Aleya. She uses energy healing, business strategy, and her energetic personality to help her clients discover your passion, tell your radically authentic story, and stand out from the crowd. She is CEO of the Evolution Collective, host of the Radical Rebirth Retreat, host of the award-winning Flourishing Entrepreneur podcast, a Virgo and an Aries moon with an Aquarius rising. What better guest could we ask for? Welcome, Aleya. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Kathy. I'm excited to be here with all of you discussing one of my favorite topics.
And we originally met through Dames, which is a women's networking online. I'm in the online version.
Yeah, I am too. There's no chapter in LA.
Okay, yeah. And what I have learned from you in our conversations over the last few months has been you love telling stories and you love helping people improve their ability to speak in front of audiences. So tell us a little bit, how did you get involved in that?
I got laid off. So it was February 2020. I had just bought a new Mercedes SUV. I was feeling very spiffy with myself. And my boss says, "Oh, hey," and it's a Friday. I should have known. He flew down to LA on a Friday. I should have known something was up. And we met at one of our clients' offices. And I said, "Oh, you never come down here. Oh my gosh, it's like, don't ever come down here unless you're going to fire me," or said some joke like that. And he goes, "Ooh, this is awkward." Actually, that's exactly what's happening. We are laying you off because we're eliminating positions in marketing. I was the head of marketing at the time. To which my mouth like hit the floor. I was like, "Oh, that's great. That's great." And I got in my Mercedes and drove away. And I said, "What the heck am I going to do now?" Luckily, 2 weeks before that, they had just spent $10,000 for me to be certified as a StoryBrand certified guide. In
Awesome.
my master plan, I was going to use that certification to help the greater good, the greater company. And then as soon as I got laid off, I got instantly selfish. I said, "Okay, how can I use this for me?" And I was very blessed to have that certification because it allowed me to explore a side of marketing that I had never really given a lot of thought to before then. I've done lots of cool things in marketing. If you want to talk SEO and all of the acronyms and the doobada-doobada, to which all the things that make your eyes glaze over, I can talk about all those things. But before then, I hadn't really given as much attention to the words. And I don't know why. I was the kind of kid when I was in school, like elementary school, I got in trouble for whispering because my whisper sounded like this. And I did it all day long, talking just all day long. So when I took that certification and I started diving in and building a business because I didn't want to go and get a job because I didn't really like that job anyways. So it was kind of a blessing. I started diving into not only how people use story frameworks within business, but how people can and should use story frameworks to build culture, to build personal brands, to connect and build relationships with other people. And I realized that that's really all marketing is, building lucrative relationships with another human being. And how do you build a relationship? Well, you share your story and you listen to theirs. And with that certification, and now it's been almost what, 4 years in, I think if you were looking at my strength finder, I think one of my strengths is maximizer. So I took that, and then now the author of the framework in the book, Donald Miller, I teach alongside of him in his platform. I fly around teaching the framework. I'm all in.
Awesome.
And I love the way that stories really just improve people's lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great way to build rapport. I know, and you may be aware of this, there was a study at Stanford sometime in the last 10 years where the outcome of the study showed when we share our stories, it causes the oxytocin in the back of our brain to flow, making us all feel good. And so, and I think for women, I think it's innately in there that we know that when we share stories, but it is something that you can, think about that and use that in business, like you say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how can this help us build our brand?
Well, first of all, you need to know what your story is. So I now in my development journey don't just focus on storytelling. I focus on a specific type of storytelling. Which if you come up with a shorter name, let me know. I'm still workshopping it, but I'm calling it radically authentic strategic storytelling. So let me break that down for a second, because to build your brand, you can tell a story. I can say I can tell you a story about anything. That doesn't mean that you're going to be interested in it, right? But if I tell you a radically authentic story, you lean in. Radical authenticity is not, I'm having a bad day, let me spew it on the internet. That's not radically authentic. That's you living in your emotional center, which could be leading you in a good direction or not, often not, if you're taking to the interwebs to share a story. Radical authenticity is understanding who you are at your core, that part of you who does not change. And in order to do that, you have to excavate all the crap that you've told yourself over the years, right? The stories that are not serving you, the stories that are getting in the way of you telling that truth that you're probably a little nervous to tell. If you have a story within you that makes you go, I don't know if I'm ready to tell that one, that's probably the direction you're wanting to go in. That's a clue that that is the story that someone needs to hear, and or that you need to explore and let go of to see what's underneath it. For me, I tell I'm a speaker, and I also have a program to teach people how to be speakers. And in that program, the very first thing we do is called crisis collection. What I ask my students to do is to list all of the crises that you've been through in your life. I mean, anything from stubbing your toe to having cancer. And I want you to look at that list and see what the themes are across, because that is a clue into the core lesson that you're meant to be here to learn and the core lesson that you're meant to be here to teach. You weren't given all of those crises to throw them away. You were given them to inspire other people. You can do that in writing. You can do that from a stage. You can do that on a podcast. You can do that on one-on-one conversation. But once you understand what that red thread, that controlling idea is, then you get curious about it, because that is one of the reasons why you're here. When I did that in my life, one of the core things that I'm here to do is to love people into the higher version of themselves. It's what I do naturally. I do it in the grocery store. I do it when I meet people, at random. If I like to make people feel more capable in approaching their own journeys when I'm done with them, right?
Exactly.
So, but I didn't just pull that out of my butt. If I did, that would be pretty awesome. Like, I was like, a very specific thing to land on, right? I went through and I did my own exercise. I was like, what are all the things that I've gone through? And what does that better equip me to do? Then I started pulling out, okay, now which one of these crisis stories are stories that other people need to hear? Secrets don't help anyone. So, for example, I have a baby. She's so cute, y'all. Like, oh my God. If you want to
Ruby.
Ruby Coral Harris on Instagram. Yeah. She's really cute. You can tell that I'm not lying, right? If you go follow her. She's 14 months. She's turned 14 months on January 7th. For most of that 14 months, I was struggling with severe postpartum depression. I was also an entrepreneur, so I couldn't really show up for my business, for myself, for my family. I tried. And as I couldn't show up for myself, my finances declined as my ability to show up declined, right? I can keep that story to myself and hide it and be ashamed about it and have all those negative feelings about it. Pick a negative feeling, put it in the box, right? Who does that help? Definitely doesn't help me, right? Because that makes me feel isolated and alone. And it definitely
have
doesn't
all that
help me.
negative energy stirring in your body.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. And man, can I stir a pot of negative energy? I'm gonna season it too. Like, whoa, we just gonna, yes. How else can I beat myself up? Girl, yes. I'm real good at that. Real good. But if I kept doing that, I would keep going down, 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 down. Who knows what would happen? So, I mean, there's parts to this too. Like I said, you don't just spew your crap on the internet. I was in therapy 5 hours a week. I did all of the work, right? And then one day I posted this super cute picture of me and my daughter on Instagram, and I'm holding her. And I said something along the lines of, most people, when they look at this picture, see a happy moment, and all I see is me in the depths of my postpartum depression. And I wrote it was a little lengthy of a post, but I wrote a post about it. And I was terrified, but I was like, I know that this is something that somebody else needs to hear. The emails, the DMs, the text messages, the phone calls, the meetings, they were endless from this one post. Men, women, tell me more about your story. How did you help? I need to tell my wife, my sister, my whatever. Can you come on my stage and speak about this? Do you talk about this when you're talking, right? Is it because my story is so magical? No, it's because I knew what it was. I got clear on it. I knew that it would help other people. I didn't keep it a secret. And I framed it in a way that other people could learn something from it. A story does not matter unless you know why you're telling it. I was telling that story so that other people could feel better, so that I could love people into a higher version of themselves. I don't know if y'all have ever been to a conference and you see those people on stage and you're just like, oh my God, if you don't stop talking about yourself. I stopped listening to you like a good 10, 15 minutes ago because I just don't care. What does this have to do with me? I paid good money to get my butt in this seat. And them on that stage, just big ego trip. You've been there, right, Kathy?
Exactly. And you zone out. Yeah.
You zone out. That's not why you tell stories. The only reason you even open up your mouth to tell the beginning of that story is because at the end, you're going to say, these are the 3 things I did to overcome this situation. This is exactly what you can do. This is how I can be of service to you. When you get the core of who you are and you become radically authentic and you use a storytelling framework to tell that story and not keep it a secret, that's when you build those lucrative relationships that I was talking about in the beginning.
Well, and one thing that we've noticed, especially during and even still post-pandemic, is that people are looking for 2 things. They're looking for hope and community. And if you can offer that, whether you're speaking or writing a book or writing a single chapter in one of our anthologies, if you can offer that sense of hope, sharing the lessons that we've learned along the way, because I think we all have those hero journey stories where walking along in life, trip and fall flat on our face, figure out a way to crawl, creep ourselves back up, either with the help of someone else or by ourselves. And sharing that story helps other people feel that they're human. Somebody else gets them too. And I think I know it's been healing for me to see all those people of the books that we're helping with when they write those stories. And it's like, oh yeah, we're all doing this together. This thing called life. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the hero's journey, which is one of my favorite things. Basically, like, it's my jam.
Yeah.
In a hero's journey, there's lots of characters. I'm only going to talk about 2. There's the hero, and then there's the guide in the journey. The hero is the one who knows in the beginning absolutely nothing. Think of like Harry Potter, right? He's actually not a good wizard. I said it. Yeah, I said it. He's not. He got help from everybody. Hermione, Professor McGonagall, Dumbledore, Hagrid, they're all helping him out. But he's the one that's going through a transformation. That's the role, the job of the hero, is to go through a transformation, right? So you, when you're telling the story, you're telling a story of a transformative experience. Toward the end of the story, if you're telling it from stage, if you're telling it in a Instagram post, if you're telling, you need to switch roles in order for that story to matter to someone else. You need to switch to the role of the guide. The guide knows all the things now. The guide is knowledgeable, and above being knowledgeable, they're empathetic. You're showing by your hero story that you understand this particular predicament. You can relate to other people, and you're here to help. That's the key. If you just stick with the hero's journey, I've gone through this, I had some trials and tribulations, and I lived happily ever after. Yay for
Short story.
It's like, okay. I go, right. Thank you so much. And now there's refreshments. I don't know what to do with that information until you switch roles. You say, I've gone through this, and here's my happy life after, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to get it. I'm going to give you a plan. I'm going to show you throughout the way that I'm not judging you. How can I judge you? I literally just told you I went through the same thing. And when you switch roles and you understand what role you're playing in conversations, and you understand what role you're playing in your public persona, you'll be able to craft your visibility and your presence in a way that people will be more drawn to you. If you look at your social posts and you're like, gosh, I do play the hero a lot. I talk about all my victories, talk about the things that I'm doing, talk about things I'm coming out with. I'm talking about how great this all is. People only have a certain threshold for that, right? They want to cheer you on, but then it's just like, it goes from to yeah, you know?
There's that fine line in there, yeah, where it becomes too bragatory, and you turn it off again. Yeah.
So it's time to switch to the guide, right? Here's how I did it. Here's how I can help you. Share a story that makes you slightly uncomfortable. If you look on my LinkedIn, and did I post it on Instagram? Probably. I don't have time to be like trying to figure out. I just post the same thing everywhere. I posted at this story last week, might have been this week, about how about postpartum depression and how basically like we were broke this past year. Mostly because I was so tired of the Happy New Year posts that were so vague. I had some challenges in 2023, but 2024 is going to be awesome. And they all sounded like that. I was like, y'all full some bullshit. Like, why can't you just approach this from a human perspective? And so I was like, these are my challenges. This is how I'm reframing. I encourage you to do that too, because I know that your year not everybody's year was all rainbows and gumdrops. Mine wasn't. And here's what you do from then, right? I've gotten clients from that post. That was not my goal. I was just literally just fed up with people not showing up and connecting.
And I saw that post, and I reacted to that post also. So I definitely was, reading it as a connector, as a friend, someone that knows you. And it's like, oh yeah, been there, done that, so it created a new connection, a deeper level connection for us at some point. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's your goal. When people are authors, you say it in your deep chest voice, I'm an author. You are trying to reach an audience. You also say that in your deep chest voice. That's not really the goal here. I'm trying to reach Christine and Susan and Heather and Kathy and Deborah and Julie and Sheila and Joanne. I'm trying to reach you as an individual. And when you can create that feeling, that give and take, that feeling of reciprocity, of sharing an experience together, that's when you, yes, will build an audience, but an audience of adoring, raving fans. People that build audiences that basically like are indestructible are the ones that know how to share. the ones who strategically share. You don't need to know all your dirty stuff. Just strategically share with me back and forth. I was watching a movie last night that feels completely unrelated. I promise it's not. It's called The Spy Who Dumped Me, with Mila Kunis and this other actress who's hilarious, and I can't remember her name, but they're best friends, like best friends. And it's an action comedy, and they're tied up and they're about to be beaten up by this lady who's kind of an odd lady who has no friends. And so they just started trying to humanize themselves by sharing what they knew about each other.
Mhm.
And the lady pauses and she goes, how do you know all this stuff about each other? And you can see this sadness come over her face, because she realized that depth and knowing each other's stuff was what built such a strong relationship. Throughout this movie, they had many, 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 many times to ditch each other. They could have been like, you know what, this is too hard. This is actually your problem, not my problem. I'm out. But because they had built such deep relationship by sharing back and forth, they were tied up together and they got out, they survived. It was great. It was wonderful. It's a happy ending. But in that moment, you realize the power of knowledge. When I'm a stranger, you're less likely to want to interact with me. When you know more things about me, you start getting curious and you start trying to figure out how your story matches and intertwines with my story.
So because occasionally we will get someone starting to tell us their story. We hear a lot of stories from the victim role. And
Yeah.
they're not in the hero persona yet. How do you move them from that victim role? How do you personally get them out of that victim role into that new perspective of, because sometimes I have sat in those audiences and I have listened to those keynote speakers, but they're telling us stories from that victim role. And depending on where you are in life, you can either see straight through it or you're going to agree with them, which is what they want. Yeah.
So
how do we get them out of that victim role? Yeah.
First of all, how do you know you're in the victim role? Let's start there. And then we're trying to get you out, right?
Yeah.
Victim role. So the hero is the one who goes through a transformation. The guide is the one who helps them, because they don't know anything. The victim is the only purpose of the victim in a story is to make the hero look good. That's it. The damsel in distress doesn't have an emotional transformation. She goes from up in the tower to not in the tower again. She's just the goal of the knight in shining armor. I mean, it's objectifying at best, but you know what I mean. Right? There's nothing is going on. So if you are feeling like that, the first thing I want you to do is ask yourself, do you want to change? Are you ready for a transformation? Because if you're in the victim role, you could, in a more positive light, look at yourself as a pre-hero. If you're in the pre-hero role, it might just mean that you need a better mentor because you're stuck. It also means that is not the story that you should be sharing. Let's rewind back to what I was talking about earlier. You're developing these crisis stories, and then you're looking for the thread throughout to understand the core of who you are and how you can help others. If you're still stuck on the first part and you haven't moved forward to the next part and you're just telling random stories, you're not helping other people. So why are you talking? Why are you sharing? What's the point? If you're sharing to get help, that's a different avenue. That's a different type of sharing. That's you calling a friend. That's you calling a therapist. That's you writing in a journal. If you're sharing externally as an author, as a speaker, as a content creator, a thought leader, you should be sharing to be of service. So I want you to have a come to Jesus moment with yourself first and ask, are you ready to be of service in this area? And if you're not, that's totally okay. There are lots of areas where I'm not ready to be of service. Oh man, and I really want to be though. Like I really want to, oh man, I wish I could tell you what to do, but I haven't figured it out yet. So catch me in about 5 years. And then maybe I'll be ready to tell that story. So you don't have to tell the story that is the most painful because you think that it is the one that is what people want to hear. People want to hear the story that you've overcome that you can help them overcome, not your most painful story that you haven't overcome yet. Then if you're like, yes, no, Aleya, no, I'm ready. I'm going to go from this victim role and I'm going to step into this hero role. I am ready for the transformation. I'm ready to do the work. I'm ready to meet the mentor. I'm ready to go through the trials that it takes to go through this transformation. I'm like, awesome. You look for clues in your journey of where you're at. Because if you're fresh and you just made this decision to move from victim to hero role, there are probably not going to be a lot of clues. But you want to keep your eyes open to trials. Sorry, that's kind of the first thing that's going to happen. Is it's going to get harder before it gets better? I really hate talking about this part because it feels like I'm the bearer of bad news, like I'm wishing this upon you, but I promise I'm not. It's just what happens. That's how transformation happens. You can't transform without going through something. Everybody talks about this butterfly, right? It goes in the cocoon, it comes out, butterfly, blah, blah, blah. Do you know how difficult it must be in that cocoon for that butterfly? I mean, it literally is liquefying its body and growing wings. That's incredibly painful to me. Just because on the outside, all we see is a beautiful chrysalis and we're just waiting for the butterfly to emerge. It seemed like it's going through some things. And that's what you're looking for first. And when you're aware of that trial that's coming, whether it's internal, external, you're more prepared to understand this is a trial. Let's do this because I'm ready to go on this hero's journey.
Well, the chrysalis itself is even constricting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's created boundaries and barriers that it's waiting for the butterfly to break through.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a human would do.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you for continuing that metaphor. I love a good metaphor.
Feel free to use it anytime.
Okay. I will cite the author.
Yeah.
No plagiarism here. So as you're moving forward and you're going through your trials, document them. That's the best time to write the story is while it's happening. Because when you look back, and if you're making a list of crisis stories, you're going to forget certain things. So I recommend that people on a hero's journey, moving from hero to victim, you journal. And not just you can just, do your thing, journal, however, but if you can, and you can get yourself into a mode of hyper awareness about your own life, I want you to be able to journal about your story points. The hero's journey is not powerful because some old white guy named Joseph Campbell decided to write it and create it. Joseph Campbell did not create the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell codified the hero's journey. Through anthropological research, he went across time and space to determine how human beings live their lives, and he put it into a framework because he realized that across time and space, we all live our lives and tell our stories in a structure. So if you know that, then apply that structure to your life and look and see where you're at. And write your story points as you're going through. That does a couple things. One, it's going to be one heck of a story later. And two, it helps you realize that you're moving. You're not stuck, even when you're crying, even when it's hard, even when I can't go on. This is the worst I've ever experienced. Well, but then you look back and you're like, well, actually, in a story point, this is probably trial number 2 or 3. That means I've already gone through trial number 1, number 2, maybe I'm on trial number 3. That means that this resolution is on its way. That's how life works. I'm moving forward. It doesn't feel good, but I am in movement, and you keep yourself moving forward.
And even what you just said is an aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
I keep a small journal in my bag that I could be driving along, see somebody's license plate and have an aha moment. And I'll pull over and I'll write it down and that's what this one little journal is that fits in my bag. I write down all my aha moments. And I go back and I may later use those as part of a story.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. An aha journal. I love that. I'm going to get an aha journal. It's going to have sparkles on it. Be ready, everybody. I think that if you miss your own story, it's harder to tell it to others or to even call yourself a storyteller. I'm a professional speaker. Most of my revenue comes from getting up on a stage and running my mouth. But I can't do that if I don't know myself. I'm not just up there so you can hear words come from my melodic voice. That's not why I'm there. I'm there because I have something to say. How do you get something to say? You go through some stuff. and you share it as a story and help other people go through it through knowledge, through research, through personal experience, through case studies, through clients, whatever you want to do. So as an author, thank God you've gone through some things so you have something to say. Otherwise, I mean, you've read the books that are just like, didn't I just read that book by a different author? Because it's just like that other book that I just read, right? We don't want to do that. We want to add to the conversation as you're transforming from pre-hero to hero. As a recap, ask yourself if you're really ready for the transformation. If you're not, it's cool. Come back to it. If you are, document your journey and realize that the trials are coming and look forward to the end, which is the resolution and the success, and then plan out what you're going to do with it. Gosh, when this resolves, I'm going to do a TEDx talk about it. When this resolves, I'm going to pre-write the Instagram post about it. When this resolves, I'm going to pre-write the outline for this book about it, because this will resolve. And this is how I'm going to share that story when I'm ready with the world.
And sometimes we ask, even, are you ready to release that struggle?
A very good question.
Because, yeah, some people aren't quite ready to let go of that struggle. It's too much of a norm for their daily living. But by asking that question, it does help them go, oh, I never looked at it as a struggle. Well, hopefully that. It's like, oh, I just thought this was normal. It's like,
yep.
no,
I think that
this let it be a struggle. Yeah.
You don't have to struggle. Struggle is optional. Trials are not optional. It's just kind of like why we're here. Struggle is optional. Right? You're going to go through some things, I promise you. But it's how you go through those things that matter. Right? You said something that was interesting too. Are you ready to release this struggle? And so people, when they release things, they either don't, and they're like, yeah, I released it. It's just like at arm's length, I still have it in my hand. Or
I need it.
I'm super releasing it. I'm just going to bring it back.
Yeah.
And you don't really release it. Or you're like, well, but if I release it, how can I write about it? If I release the struggle, I let it go, that means I can't ever think about it again. Those are two different things. So releasing the struggle from your heart, releasing yourself from reliving the pain and the trauma of an event is different from being able to basically change your side of the table. I've gone through workshops where you'll sit in front of an open, empty chair and you'll tell a story about a pain or trauma, you'll release it. And then you'll stand up and you'll sit in that other chair and you receive that story and give yourself better advice, right? It's amazing. If you haven't done that, like you're like, it's just two chairs. You'll be surprised at how your perspective changes just by standing up and sitting down in the other chair. And that's
a great idea for that reframing. Yeah.
For the reframing. That's what we're talking about here, right? Exactly, Kathy. When you are letting go of a struggle, you're just looking at it from another side, as opposed to looking at it as the victim. You're looking at it as the guy, as the hero. How can I then tell myself, baby girl, you survived this. Good for you. Congratulations. Now go forth and proselytize your message. Like, how are you sharing this across?
Exactly. I want to make sure if anybody has any questions that you get those answered today. I know we've got a lot of information. I could sit here and listen to you all afternoon. If you've got those questions, drop them in the chat. Now, how can my story play a part? I'll take us back to that first question in developing and sharing my brand.
Gotcha. So what is a brand? It's actually like a more complicated question than you might think it is, right? If you ask a graphic designer, they'll tell you your brand or your colors and your logos. If you ask a copywriter, they'll tell you that your brand is the words. And if you ask Jeff Bezos, which, God, I hate that he's the one that said this, but I actually agree with his definition the most. For Jeff Bezos, he said, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And that is the most, for me, that I've heard so far, the most effective definition of a brand. How do you get them to say the things that you want, though? That's the hard part. Clarity and consistency. So you structure your story in a way that it's easy to understand and doesn't have a lot of commas. What do I mean by that? I could sit here and list literally all the things that I am. I'm a speaker, a podcast host, a retreat host. I am a bioenergetic wellness practitioner. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. Blah, blah, blah. And then go ask you to recite that list to somebody else. You might get 2 of them, right? There's a lot of commas in that. If I tell you I'm a strategic storytelling consultant and I help people unearth stories so they can better share them with the world, it's a lot easier, right? And if I frame that in a story, which is just about talking about what is the problem that I solve, how do I solve it empathetically, and how does it lead people to success and away from failure? And I tell that same thing over and over and over and over again, all of a sudden, you get me. And you're saying, oh my God, I know Aleya. She really helped me clarify my message and share my authentic truth with the world. I was really struggling to show up, and she helped me show up. And then the other person comes to me and they're like, oh my God, Aleya, really, blah, 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 she helped me show up. Oh, blah, 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 blah. And then it catches on like wildfire. All of a sudden, you're Taylor Swift. Everybody knows your name. Because it's an easy story to tell. People also tell story through feelings. If you're like, oh, I don't want to structure this whole story. Well, how do you make people feel? How do you want to make people feel? This happened to me when I feel like I write my own testimonials when I get off stage, because every time, we love your energy. We love your energy. We love your energy. And my people are going to start thinking that I'm making these quotes up and that the people that I'm attributed to them to are fake, because it's the same thing every time. So sometimes people write your story for you. I like that story though, because it gets me booked on stages. So I'm going to keep telling it, because people are looking for energetic speakers.
Yeah,
So,
people want, what is it in that movie? I want what she's having, you know? It's like, what is she drinking? I want some of that.
well, I want some of that. I want some of that. Now I'm making the Kool-Aid. I'm adding the sugar. I'm handing it out in Dixie cups. That's where I'm at. So you have to think about your brand as what people say about you when you're not in your room, and how you make them feel. And if you can just hone in on phrases that you hear first, and if you like what you hear, keep repeating them back to your audience. If you don't like what you hear, figure out what's wrong. It's not that you're saying the wrong thing. It starts earlier than that. You're doing something wrong. You're not doing the actions or the behaviors that are backing up what you want, how you want to show up in the world and other people's minds. So start there. Don't just start with the words. Then you're like, okay, this is how I'm going to show up. This is the words that I'm going to use. This is how I'm going to act. This is how I'm going to treat people. This is how I want to be remembered. If you think about it from another perspective, write your own eulogy. I know, got morbid real quick, sorry. But write your own eulogy. What do you want it to say? Because I mean, I guess you could technically write your own eulogy and leave it behind for somebody else to read, but most of the time, somebody else is going to write that for you. And if you haven't lived the words that you want them to say, they're not going to say them.
It's funny that I hadn't thought about that in a long time. When my husband and I got married, and we're talking 40 years ago, the minister that we were working with had us write each other's eulogy.
Ooh, good minister.
And it's like, do we still have those letters? And then present that to each other after the wedding. So
that's awesome. You should find those. I mean,
yeah,
40 years is a long time. I wonder how much is the same and how much is different.
And where would those letters be? Yeah, I don't know.
No, I don't know. I can't help you with that.
I'm sure they're in a drawer somewhere or a box. Yeah.
Yeah, you put them where you would remember them, which means you're never gonna.
Yeah.
For me, when I put something where I remember it's gonna be, I'm never gonna find that again.
Yeah. So I have learned so much from you today. Let me tell you. I understand that you have a gift for our listeners today, and I'm going to put that link in the chat here.
Please do pop it on in there. And in full transparency, I don't remember what I told you I was going to give them, so I'm waiting for you to pop that link so I can.
There we go.
It's the recalibration guide. So it's a recalibration guide. It's a free guide. It's about 20-ish pages and is all about step one, which is unearthing yourself, that core, getting to that core of you using excavation and replenishment exercises. And it also includes guided meditations, book resources, and it weaves in a little bit like, okay, now you know yourself. How do you put that into your marketing to build your brand? So free
That's
gift
awesome.
to you. Thank you, because I did not remember what I told you.
That's okay. It's been a while since you filled this out. So if you had some parting words of wisdom, because I know we have authors, we have speakers, we have trainers, we have lots of professionals on the call today. What would those parting words of wisdom be?
Don't judge yourself when you find out who you are. It's very easy to look at your story and then layer on unnecessary things like shame and guilt and doubt and fear. That's not the purpose of you excavating the core of who you are. Look at who you are, realize how beautiful it is, and realize your mission now is to share that with the world in the best and highest way that you can. Everything that's happened to you, I'm a firm believer that it's happened for a reason. And that reason is for you, one, to love and appreciate yourself and allow other people to do the same.
I love that. That almost sounds as if it's an end of a meditation that you might give on one of your retreats.
I am on Insight Timer. I mean, I got to use this voice for something. I had someone that worked for me who had me read them the ABCs and record it. And she listened to it every night because she said it put her to sleep.
Oh my gosh. Hopefully not because she was bored, but yeah.
Hopefully, I mean, it was a very melodic ABCs.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I want to thank our live audience. I loved all the information that you gave us today. And our next group is going to be not on February 8th at 11 a.m. We'll be talking with Chris McClellan about podcasting as a marketing tool for authors. I also want to remind everybody that next Friday on January 12th, is that right? Tomorrow. Darlene Hertz, one of my NLP partners, and I are doing a release your story exercise from NLP perspective. So, and it didn't occur to me till we're here talking about it. It's like, oh yeah, that's tomorrow, isn't it? And is still time to register for that if you want to be. We do walk you through some steps for releasing some of those old stories. One last thing I wanted to add is that our editors came up with a way to remember when we're helping people write their chapters for anthologies or write their books, is that no naming, no shaming, no blaming. So we don't use other people's authentic names unless we have their permission. We're not going to blame other people for the state that we're in, and we're not going to shame somebody else and make them the victim. So it was definitely in the background of my mind today as we were talking about all this, is that, oh, this plays a role in this storytelling thing. And I've learned so much. Thank you, Aleya, for being here. I greatly appreciate it. The recording will go out in a couple days and it'll be on YouTube, and you'll get that link. So you can reach Aleya. When we send out the recording, we'll have your contact information as well as this link and how people can get in touch with you.
Wonderful. Thank you so
all.
much.
Thank you, Aleya. Thank you for being here. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.